This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a highly popular and beloved actress who is, of course, best known for her long-standing portrayal of Julie Williams on the hugely successful daytime drama series Days of Our Lives, for which she has received 6 Daytime Emmy Award nominations. In fact, she is the only actor to have appeared on the show for all 7 decades that it has been on the air. She's also well known for her recurring role as Joanna Manning on The Young and the Restless and as District Attorney Patricia Steele on Sunset Beach. In addition, our guest has appeared in dozens of other TV shows, including The Loretta Young Show, Hawaiian Eye, The Young Marrieds, The FBI, Dragnet, Ironside, Matlock, and many more. Our guest and her dear husband and co-star, the mega-talented and multi-award-winning actor, the late, great Bill Hayes, whom we lost last January, were without question television's greatest love story, appearing as Doug and Julie Williams on Days of Our Lives for over 50 years, which was definitely the longest-running romance in television history. They became the very first and still remain the only soap opera actors in the world to appear on the cover of Time magazine in its January 12th, 1976 issue. And this superstar couple have written 2 best-selling books, a novel entitled Trumpet and a memoir entitled Like Sands Through the Hourglass, which is widely considered to be the best book ever written about daytime television. They also hosted the wonderful website soapopera-secrets.com. And in 2018, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences presented our guest and her husband, Bill Hayes, with Lifetime Achievement Awards at the 45th Annual Daytime Emmy Awards. I am delighted and honored to welcome the legend herself, Susan Seaforth Hayes, to our show. Ms. Hayes, thank you so much for being here.
Harvey, thank you so much for inviting me, and what a wonderful introduction. I never had an agent that had done such a good job on giving my biography. Thank you.
Well, it's a great pleasure. I want to start by acknowledging your mother, Elizabeth Harrower, who was not only a respected actress, but she was also the head writer for Days of Our Lives, earning 3 Emmy Award nominations. And she wrote for 2 other shows as well, The Young and the Restless and Generations. You must have been so proud of each other's careers.
Well, I was delighted by all of our careers. The key to it was my being cast on Days of Our Lives. The character appeared in the first episode. I didn't make the first episode. I auditioned and read for the Corday family, and I was playing at that time on The Young Marrieds a fashion model, and I had a lot of makeup on and a lot of eyelashes, and they decided she looks too smart and too mature to play this character. So the first 4 actresses that played it did not last. And on the 4th recast, they returned to me, and I finally got to do the show. Because of Days of Our Lives, I had this long run of a chance to do a lot of great scenes. Because of the long run, I met Bill Hayes in person. Of course, I'd purchased his records, and I'd seen him live in the theater when he was doing the national tour, Bye Bye Birdie. I had loved him on your show of shows. And then there was a writer's strike, and they were looking for anybody that could write the show. They found my mother, who could write the show, and she became a member of the Screen Writers Guild and became head writer of the show, which was one of the hardest years either of us ever experienced. It was amazing. That's because everybody knew it was Mom that was writing. The cast and numerous people would come up to me and say, "You know, Susan, that story your mother has given me, I'm having a little difficulty with it. Do you suppose you could tell her?" Well, I never told my mother how to do anything. So it was a stressful year, but a great year.
That definitely puts you in a very delicate position for sure.
Yeah, kind of a squeeze. I was getting depressed, and my producer said, "It's time for you to go into therapy, Susan," which I did, and snapped out of all the depression and continued to enjoy doing the show.
Can you remember the most important career advice your mother ever gave you?
Well, always sit up straight, which I had a tendency not to do, and never look like you're bored on a set. I was then about 8 years old. And since she was an actress, she said, no, no. And she'd give me line readings. But around the time I was 13, I started doing it for myself. And that was, I guess I did it okay, because I'm still getting to do it. You know, many movie stars that we adore, the very great ones, Dietrich, Garbo, Betty Davis, Julia Roberts, Judi Dench. By the way, I would love to be thought of as the Judi Dench of Days of Our Lives. Call me crazy, Harvey, but that's kind of my dream. Now that I'm Judi Dench's age group. The great stars that make a great impression have usually a lot of background around them to present them. The writers, the directors, the cameraman, all of that. And you have maybe in a lifetime, in a prolific lifetime, maybe 40 hours that the fan gets to spend with that person. In daytime, the casts are with you for years and years. It's not 40, it's not 50 hours, it's thousands. And when you continue to be a presence in their lives, in their fantasy lives, you become very close and you appreciate the impact you have on people.
Well, I hope you do appreciate the impact you've had on people. I think you are more than the Judi Dench of daytime television. You are the Sarah Bernhardt, the Meryl Streep, the Judi Dench, all wrapped up into one. I mean, do you feel any guilt at all for the fact that an entire generation of school kids played hooky and stayed home from school to watch your show?
Here's the deal. One of those kids that stayed home and played hooky to watch the show wound up being a head writer of the show.
So there you go.
Her daughter is now our assistant, is now my assistant. Her daughter just set up all of this, the lovely light and the laptop to look to you on. So yes, I don't feel guilty about that. I feel proud and delighted that the show had that power. And the show is about to celebrate its 60th anniversary on the air, which is miraculous, just wonderful.
Oh, it's monumental. And of course, I want to take a moment to pay tribute to our beloved Bill Hayes, your dear husband, who was a multi-award winning, 2-time Emmy nominated actor whom we lost in January. He will forever be remembered for his classic recording of the Ballad of Davy Crockett, and of course for his portrayal of Doug Williams on Days of Our Lives. I am so sorry for your loss, Miss Hayes. How have you been doing these past months?
Well, here's a picture of Billy. This was on his 80th birthday, looking so much like himself, smiling, optimistic, naturally gifted with beauty and talent, but a personality and a spiritual heart that only built on that talent. Since you mentioned that he's gone, he passed away the 12th of January this year, 24, after a smooth and I hope fulfilling decline. He merely had too many happy birthdays. The show has handled that bad news rather beautifully. The head writer was kind enough to attend Bill's memorial and heard my eulogy to my husband and said, I think I would like you to give the same one for the character of Doug. So that will be coming up on the show. And then he asked me, how do you feel about Julie's attitude, Julie's life following the loss of her partner? And we agreed on how Julie might be feeling. And he has written several scenes for me to play that. So I'm very grateful that the reality of my own loss and the loss that the fans will experience will be translated into an emotional and realistic storyline. Many times on many shows that I've performed on and that I watch, in a long run, after a while, there's always a change of regime. And Days of Our Lives has had a change of regime so often in the 50 years I've been watching and there and more. Every time you have a new head writer, a new producer, you have a new take on the show. That's the reason there's a new one. And this time, I think we are in an era of fast-paced stories, quick-moving stories. A quick problem comes up and it's quickly resolved. A quick problem comes up and it's quickly resolved. And entertainingly, of course. In my concept of what makes this audience stay or return if they've been away, is to feel something emotionally. And often it's the same story over and over again. How did we fall in love? How did it go wrong? How did we fix it? That's the same story under any circumstances with different couples. And this is, how do we lose the most important thing in life and how do we handle it? So my marriage was the most important thing in my life. And during Billy's, I'm being very candid with you, Harvey. During Billy's decline, the Billy was the most important thing in my life. And since we have a large family, I inherited more than 45 people that I can call granddaughter, grandson, son, uncle, all of that. So now I don't have him in the house. I have them scattered all over the United States, and I have the show right there in Burbank, only 3 miles away from our house. The show has become very important to me in the last few months, mainly because I have been treated so beautifully by my coworkers, and I want to do them proud, and I want to do the show proud.
I think you've made all of us proud. I think your relationship was the standard, the gold standard for what a relationship should be. The fact that it happened to be real in real life only magnified the impact. And I'm just so very honored to have this chance to tell you how much you mean. In fact, one of my dearest friends, Sharon, who adores you and lives and breathes Days of Our Lives, helped me to really do my research and get to know you not only as Miss Susan Seaforth Hayes, but as Julie. And it made me wonder, I mean, when you first started working out on television, you appeared in a whole slew of classic TV shows like Lassie, The Danny Thomas Show, 77 Sunset Strip. I saw you in Cheyenne, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. What were your career goals back then?
Oh, back then, of course, you want to be a movie star. Of course. And I was delighted to do theater, which I did starting when I was 4 years old with the Metropolitan Opera. My first performance was on stage in the first production of Madame Butterfly that followed World War II, when the Met was touring in those days, and came out to California, and I appeared at the Hollywood Bowl as Trouble in Madame Butterfly, as the little child in Butterfly. A very vivid, because that was my first experience working with music, with real singers. And I wound up married to a real singer and realized how hard they work. I did a lot of the shows that we all remember because there were only 3 networks. Of course, we remember those shows. On Bonanza, I got to work with Dennis Hopper. I got to work with a Bonanza cast. That was great. The reason I love doing 77 Sunset Strip was I had at that point gone to college and was definitely planning on forgetting about show business until I saw Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. on 77 Sunset Strip. And I sent fan letters, and I got a 8x10 black and white autograph picture back. Great, great. And Mother said, I think you'd get further, Susan. I said, I really want to meet him. I really want to meet him. Of course, everybody wants to meet him. Really want to meet him. So my mother said, why did you write as producer and critique the show? That was a wonderful idea, because the producer at that point, Howie Horwitz, read the fan mail. He read mine, and his interest was piqued in my ideas or whatever I was writing. And then he found out I was an actress. And then he queried me a bit more by mail and said, well, when you're 18 years old and can work a full workday, I'd like you to come in and meet you. He immediately introduced me to other people on the lot, and 3 weeks later, I was working on an episode of Surfside 6. I finally got to work on Sunset Strip with Roger Smith, and I enjoyed that enormously. And one day, I never got to work with Ephraim, But one day I was calling Mother, to whom I owed so much. Mom, I'm in a phone booth on the lot at Warner's. And oh my goodness, Ephraim is just walking right by. Excuse me, Mom. I hung up. And I kind of slinked out of the phone booth. I was rather well dressed at that moment. And Ephraim came by and looked at me, and I looked at him. He reached out, he embraced me. Now, this is the 60s. He embraced me, took the cigar out of his lips, and planted a big wet kiss. And drew back and said, I am Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And I said, I know. He put the cigar back and walked away. As you can see, it was a highlight, a real highlight. And it excited my interest in being in show business again. So I gave up on the idea of being a history teacher and said, okay, this is it.
What would happen if an actor did that today, do you think?
Oh, I'd slap him across the face. Nobody much does. Mostly they kiss me on the cheek now. They do come up and kiss me, though. That's the pleasure.
You know, over the years, we've had a number of your colleagues on the show: Eric Braeden, Louise Sorrell, Kevin Spiritus, Carolyn Hennessy.
Crazy Kevin. You had all the crazy guys.
They've all told me, Miss Hayes, that working on a soap opera is the hardest work an actor can do, and the actors get the least respect within the industry. Do you agree with them?
I agree with them, short of dancing in a Broadway show. Yeah. Short of doing 8 performances a week flat out. As far as television is concerned, certainly the hardest. And that's certainly because you're required to always know your lines, and the lines never stop. If you've got a storyline and you're working 4 days a week, you may also, because of the way the stories are told, often there is plot repetition. So you may be dead on for Monday, but by the time you get to Thursday and you're in the same scene, having the same fight, didn't I say that already? Wait, no, that comes in Friday show. No, wait. I'm sorry, I can't. Well, when you can't, you can be gone in 48 hours. So the consequence of the speeding up of American culture, and certainly the speeding up of telling stories, since now the audience's period of concentration is sunk down to about 12 seconds, we are expected to come in and do what used to be a big day would be 45 pages, 50 pages. We're now shooting 120 pages, 138 pages a day. We have down weeks when we're not spending so much money on the budget. This is all driven by we want more for the money on the part of everyone who is in business in the world. Everyone is expecting you to do more faster and be just as good. And that's the thing. We've eliminated cue cards 15 years ago. So there's no one to look to in the corner that has that word you can't remember, cracker. And one of your male guests, one of your distinguished male guests that I worked with quite a bit, had a tendency when doing a scene, I'm looking you in the eye. Now you're speaking, I don't have to look you in the eye. I know the camera isn't on you. I'm checking the line. Eric was a little, anyway, now we don't have that. We only have one rehearsal in front of a camera. That's all the director gets to see. That's all the booth gets to see. That's all you get to do. And then you're on. And then they expect it in one take. And some days you have 40 pages. Mercifully, some days you have 8. But that excellence is expected no matter how many pages you have. And you're expected to look good and be pleasant.
How do you do that? I mean, I know when Louise Sorrell was on our show, after having been away from Days for a while, then she came back. She told me on camera that she couldn't get over the changes and how much more rushed and intense everything was. And she really found it hard. And you've had to adapt to that for 5 decades. How do you do that?
Well, the human creature is capable of many wonderful achievements. A human creature can go down into a coal mine and dig for 14 hours a day for very little pay, come up, feed his family, and die. But he does it because he has to do it. In the centuries preceding our own, men were put on ships that knew nothing about sailing and having to go up to the top of a mast and change the sails during a snowstorm or a windstorm or a terrible storm at sea. And if they missed out, if they didn't do it right, they fell into the sea and they drowned. People on the edge have to do a lot to survive in any business.
But you make it look like fun.
We liked acting, or we wouldn't have gotten into the job in the first place. The people that are being driven, not by slave drivers, but are being driven by a tight schedule, still come up to me every morning and say, well, it's this or nothing, and I still love it. I love it. And they're nervous and they're tense. And Louise was nervous and tense and thrown because she's so good. And knowing she's so good, they threw so much show on her, so many words, so much to do. And she was still wonderful. Why? Because she's a professional, meaning I like to work hard. I like to work.
I just love it. And I'm in such awe of your professionalism, your attention to detail, your commitment to excellence. I want to take you to July 23rd, 1970, your first on-screen kiss with Bill. It was your first kiss also in real life. Was that kiss everything you hoped it would be?
Well, I hoped it would be a good kiss, and I hoped it would be the story that we were trying to tell, that a woman who wants to be loved sees this ideal lover and throws herself at him. And then in life, I saw this ideal man who was recently divorced, had moved to California in order to bring all of his children, came to live with him. This actor who had starred on Broadway and who had so many gifts and was so much fun to be around. This man was going to be working opposite me. Wow. I had to be up, I had to work hard. And both of us started our relationship by running lines a lot. The scenes were longer then. The show was shorter, but the scenes were longer and in more depth. And we'd run lines together over the telephone at night. And then we didn't have to run lines, we could talk. So we knew each other as respectfully as friends for quite a while before the heat from those kinds of kisses that we were doing in the script began to make a difference, began to make a real difference. I was dating a newscaster at the time. It's always been television. And he was on twice a day. He did the 6 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news, and he expected me to watch both shows every night.
He did?
And he would occasionally stoop to watching my show on in the daytime. And he was looking at these kisses with Bill and saying, what's that? What's going on? And I had been in this man's thrall for 6 years and no engagement ring. I said, it's acting. It's all acting. And after a while, he began to understand it wasn't acting. And after a while, I began to be glad it wasn't acting. And I dropped him. And after only 4 years of lots of acting, Billy and I got married. And that was the beginning of the greatest time of my life.
Oh, for sure. Did you and Bill ever have any input into the storyline for your characters?
At one point we did. Bill suggested that we do a variety show. And they said, we can't afford all the copyrights for music. He said, we'll just do music that's not under copyright anymore. We'll do old tunes. And he managed to talk the management into creating what we call the CAT scan review. And that was kind of a high point of our lives. Billy and I did one vaudeville routine in which the violinist comes out and plays, and behind him a stripper comes out and starts to strip. Well, he plays his little violin piece and the applause gets to be more and more as she takes off her clothes. He comes back and reprises it and more and more and more until finally he turns around and realizes I was the stripper and he was playing the violin as he did. And we loved that moment. That was his biggest contribution, I would say, to the show, other than being the first actor to sing on daytime television within a dramatic premise. And he, of course, he could write his own arrangements. He could accompany himself on the piano. And then they tried it over at Young and Restless, and they wound up singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic which didn't work out too well. In any event, it took a while for everybody to realize that music could be such a wonderful vehicle for telling stories of romance. Ours particularly, we had one song which was called The Look of Love. And at that time, the show was co-owned by Corday Productions and Columbia Pictures. And Columbia Pictures had a great catalog of music. And you could use a Columbia Picture song for $1. Not $200, $600, $12,000, now $15,000, but then $1. So Billy sang The Look of Love from Casino Royale to me more than 40 times. And I liked it.
Oh, how could you not? Were there ever times when you were unhappy with the direction that the writers were taking your character on the show?
Yes, and here's the lesson. Billy and I asked, could we please have a meeting with the producers and the head writer of the show at that time? It was when the character of Hope had been introduced as an adolescent, beginning to have a romantic life, and they had decided to make, the lady who was the head writer had chosen to make the show build conflict between Hope, the young innocent ingenue, and her parents who were afraid for her future, because the man that she loved turned out to be Beau, who was an exciting and rough-hewn character. Well, Billy found that they were writing us more and more conservative and negative, and we had never been a negative nor conservative couple, not conservative at all. So Billy went up and explained that, and he felt that there were other ways that he could treat his daughter that were not quite so negative in these adventures in romance. And the head writer informed him that he really didn't know very much about parenting or what he was talking about. Now, Bill had parented 5 children at this point. So that was that. We had exchanged information. I remember going into the meeting feeling a little nauseated and very nervous. We came out, and the writer came out and informed the producer she would never write for us again. We had questioned her authority. We had questioned apparently her talent and her point of view and her storyline. So we were written out of the show, and we were no longer mentioned for about 4 years. I learned not to criticize the storyline, certainly not in public, certainly not to the face of the head writer or to the producers. If I had a question, I would ask the producers exactly what they wanted. Sometimes I would ask, where is this going? Am I going down a rabbit hole here, or is this going to have a better ending? You know, there's sometimes in the mind of the creative writer, it is, if I tell the person how the story ends, they'll start playing the ending at the beginning. But an actor doesn't do that. You could never play Othello if you knew there's a murder at the end and you start, well, I'm gonna start out Othello's out. I'm angry at my wife and I'm gonna be angry all the way through. Well, no, things have to happen organically. So the answer is, here's the answer. Here's the best advice I ever got. Keep a smile on your face and your big mouth shut.
Yeah, I can see that now. Even though you're a very valuable and popular character, there's egos involved, and it's not worth it. My dear friend Sharon, who's one of your most devoted fans, told me that her favorite storyline was when Julie was trapped in an apartment trying to convince her wheelchair-bound rival to stop pretending that she couldn't walk and get out of there before Stefano attacked them. Do you remember that scene?
I remember it very well because my mother was writing the show then. And I had known the wonderful actress Brenda Benet, who was playing the character, years before. We had been Deb stars together, which meant we got a little award called a Debbie. It was when the Makeup Artists Union didn't get represented in the Academy Awards and never got any credit for all the great work they did. So they were going to present debutante stars. We had a ball, and we didn't have a TV show. It was nice. Anyway, Brenda and I had worked together and been good friends, and then I screwed up the relationship. I did something to her I should never have done, and I felt guilty about it. And when she was auditioning to play opposite Bill, I said to my mother, These are mistakes you made. Anybody but Brenda. Naturally, they hired Brenda. Well, I had never settled. I had never apologized to her. I'd never faced the fact that I'd been wrong. And she did such good work, and then had a tragedy in her own life that her little boy died suddenly, tragically. She was never the same. And when she came back from that experience, the first thing I did was go to her, apologize, tell her how much I cared about what had happened and how much I cared about her good work on the show. Thank goodness that happened, because about a month and a half later, Brenda committed suicide.
Oh, how terrible, terrible.
Had passed on with that guilt in my heart. And since then, I have tried, and I'm still doing it and trying to do it now. And that's another thing that Billy taught me, is you don't burn bridges. You don't have the last word. You make people feel as good as you possibly can, and you respect them.
I get the feeling that comes very easy to you, though. You're very well known to be extremely kind. You're a real pro. You have no ego. You are a professional. Everyone says you're beautiful to work with. So I think you have whatever lessons you needed to learn all those years ago, Miss Hayes, I think you did it.
Well, I hope so. I hope I still have a few more years to go. I'm sure I still have many lessons to learn. And I hope I get to learn them on Days of Our Lives, and I hope the show continues. And if not, I'll consider getting back into teaching history.
Oh, I think you're going to do a lot more acting before you start teaching. I want to ask you, how did your fans react when Julie married her mother's husband and suddenly became not only Hope's older sister, but her stepmother?
They liked it. They loved it when Billy married my mother, when the character married my mother on the show. And one lady who was, shall we say, of a certain age, came up to Bill in the grocery store, and he told me later, she came up to him and said, "Doug, you've done the right thing. You'll never regret it." So he'd married a much older woman, and he had a wonderful time working with Patricia Berry too. I don't think they resented it. It's, America has a lot of funny mixed marriages now of all kinds of people making up families. It's no longer just the traditional family in outlook, in color, in politics, in age range, and we are all enriched by it. So I think that Bill, who had always been the younger Prince Charming leading man, being the younger man married to an older woman, enjoyed playing that. And anyone can love anyone else in this world. And everyone is improved in a loving situation. You don't walk into a marriage where people snap at each other. You go to dinner parties with friends that snap at each other, and after a while, you don't want to be invited. So I think it was a breath of fresh air, a wonderful bit of storytelling. We got a lot of viewers with those stories, and we still try to do fresh stories about mismatched lovers. It's supposed to be an ideal of daytime, and I enjoy playing them.
Are there a lot of similarities between Julie Williams and the real Susan Hayes?
Well, let's see. We talk about red roses at Valentine's Day on a show that might be coming up next year. We've already taped it. And we talk about red roses. And these are roses from this morning from my garden. Billy loved red roses. And the red ones are behind me, and there's some in the other room. Every morning now, I go out and pick roses for him.
They are beautiful, as are you. So many soap operas have come and gone over the years, but Days of Our Lives has been so incredibly successful. You seem to have garnered loyalty, commitment from legions of fans. Have you ever tried to articulate what do you think accounts for the enduring success of that show?
As long as it mirrors the real emotions of life, I think we're golden. And we have had wonderful performances from unforgettable actors, some of whom have passed. We started with a great team in Frances Reed and McDonald Carey, who were not just idealized, they were ideal. They were a beautiful couple. They could be the mother and father of grown parents who lived with dignity and charm and a knowledge of the world. As actors, they were those people. We were blessed to have them for more than 20 years. At their peak, we had potential stars many times coming and going on the show. People with a great deal of magnetism, a great deal of humanity, a great deal of talent. Robert Clary was on the show for 10 years, singing with Billy. Patty Weaver. I don't want to forget anybody because they've all been so great. Matthew Ashford, Susan Flannery, Denise Alexander.
And what about the writing? The writing.
What about the writing? We started out with, the show was created by a lady who had written a radio soap opera and was the queen of radio soaps. And the Corday family had worked with her, knew her. She gave us the basic story, small city, center of the country, a doctor with a son who was a doctor, a son who was a lawyer, a daughter who is finding her way in the world. All solid people in suits. After she left the show, it was taken over by the man who had been trained by her, named Bill Bell. Bill Bell is considered the lion of daytime television. Thanks to Bill Bell, I got on the show. Thanks to Bill Bell, my mother had a career because he's the person that said that woman has talent. Thanks to Bill Bell, he hired Bill Hayes. I have a marriage. Thanks to Bill Bell, I have a pension. So of course, my adoration of this man's talent. He went on to create The Young and the Restless on CBS and The Bold and the Beautiful. Notice B&B, Bill Bell. His sons are the producers of those shows. His daughter-in-law has worked for the UN and is going to be running the arts program attached to the Los Angeles Olympics, Maria Bell. That family's got it. And that family hung on to our show and advised our show for years.
What an incredible legacy. Now,
Well,
I read that the role of Stephanie Forrester on The Bold and the Beautiful was created for you, but you turned it down, right?
no, I didn't turn it down. Another mistake. Bill Bell called me and said, I want you to do this. Oh, okay. These are the weeks I'm going to need you. That conflicts with the family vacation. What? It conflicts with the family vacation in Michigan. Any other day, I see. He also had a temper. He also didn't like to be told no. I see. Thank you, Susan.
And that's it?
I went on the vacation.
So you didn't really turn it down at all. That's just wrong.
Not at all.
I love the fact that your priorities were screwed on right, and you were not going to give up time with your family for a role. There's a lesson in that too.
There are many lessons. If you live long enough, you're liable to have learned a lot of lessons.
Well, I love that you're sharing them with our viewers. You know, you're one of the very few stars who has appeared on 2 different daytime drama series at the same time. In fact, there were some days when you were filming both Days of Our Lives and The Young and the Restless on the same day. How in the world did you manage that?
My trickiest time was when I got a telephone call. I got a telephone call in Germany. And they said, we need Stephanie for the following date. And it was in a couple of days. And I said, I'm in Europe. I'm in Europe. You do have any other days? And they said, no. I said, well, if I can't do it, but they said, oh, well, we cast it. Okay. So I left Berlin, flew out of the same airport that the Berlin airlift in East Berlin, and came to Los Angeles. My husband and I had been self-touring through Germany, looking for family roots. He had some, I had some. And he spoke a bit of German because he spoke a bit of many languages, Italian, Spanish, French, German. Anyhow, got here, I had brought all all of our dirty underwear back home. I did the washing, went to the studio, shot the show, came back, dried the laundry, got a call from Days of Our Lives. Susan, you've got to do a promo for us. You've got to do a promo. What? You have to do a promo. It's a sound only. And I knew Pekka Thomas. I said, okay, I'll be right over. I knew where he lived. Drove over there, did the promo, came back, picked up the laundry, got in the car, got to LAX, got out at 5 o'clock that afternoon, back to Berlin. And that was when my agent was living in Berlin, and there was Billy and my agent to help me off the plane when I got back to Berlin. So that was the most whirlwind acting experience I ever had. And I'd recommend it. It was very stimulating. I was afraid I was going to get lost in the Frankfurt airport because it was so delicious and so efficient. Of course, it's German. Anyway, I got through, didn't miss my flights, got back, continued to eat strudel and enjoy life.
Your energy level and your professionalism are off the charts. And I have to tell you, I read your book that you co-authored with Bill, Like Sands Through the Hourglass. You wrote this magnificent memoir in 2005. It's such an entertaining read, not only about your careers, but really about the golden age of television. I'm wondering if you would ever consider writing a sequel, because it has been 20 years, almost, and there's just so much more people want to know about what's happened since then.
I don't know about writing a sequel to that without Billy. That would be difficult. I did write, we also wrote a novel, and Billy and I were working on a sequel to that novel. The novel is called Trumpet. Of course, it's about an actress and the actors around her. And I wrote it in the Jane Austen period, which is such a genteel period in her works, but in fact was pretty nitty gritty in real life. So I kind of used a lot of the nitty gritty. And the sequel takes place in Charleston, 1820. It's a story about racial conflicts, slavery, and what happens to the girl who comes from another set of bad circumstances that have cut off her career, an actress making another career in another country. Billy and I have worked on it for 10 years. And he said to my assistant, Amy Shaughnessy, make sure Susan finishes this and gets it published. So once things settle down around here in my private life, I will do that.
So that's the priority. So there's Trumpet, and then there'll be the second book. That might make a really great miniseries.
Well, so would the first one. And the title of it is Lizzie's Jubilee. So anyone who ever read about Elizabeth Trumpet in Trumpet, I think would be anxious to see what happens to her next. We'll see.
I want to take you back to April 29th, 2018 at the Daytime Emmy Awards when you and Bill were given Lifetime Achievement Awards. What was going through your mind that night?
Everything. I had a large part of family was there. We thought we'd be sitting with them. As it turned out, they were sitting in the balcony. We had been told, you may say anything you wish to say. The night is, when you get to the podium, the night is yours. We were in the second row at the Pasadena Auditorium, and we had been told that someone would come out and help us out of our seats backstage so we could walk on. And nobody came out to help us up the steps. So it was a steep incline of steps. So we managed to get up without falling down. We also decided we didn't want to read it. We wanted to know it. So we had memorized 4.5 minutes in which Bill gave only his daytime television credits and mine. And then we spoke a bit about what we believed the purpose of daytime television served, what the purpose of soap opera was. And then at the memoriam, For those who have passed on in soap operas, that was on the other night when we had the 2024 Emmy Awards, they closed with some of the things that Billy had to say, which was that stories matter, people matter, fans matter most of all. And serving them by telling them the truth with respect and love is what we're there for.
Oh, absolutely. You're there to comfort, to entertain, to enlighten, to educate. I want to ask you, I mean, you've been a celebrity since the 50s.
Mini.
You've been quite a famous celebrity for many, many years, most of your life. Is there a big difference between being a celebrity back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and being a star today?
Today, there is no safe place to get away from the public. There is no place to hide. And the protective veil of keeping your mystery is all gone. It's gone. If you want to have a political opinion, chances are you may have mentioned it in a restaurant and somebody heard you and they didn't like it and they made sport of you or whatever. There is no studio system to hide or protect bad behavior. I believe if your face is known and you walk into a public place, there may be someone courageous enough to come up and say, hello, I watch you, I know who you are. There may be 12 other people who know who you are and aren't going to come up and say anything. If you behave poorly in that public place, if you make a scene, if you make an ass of yourself, if you say what shouldn't be said, if you carry on, somebody is going to be so disappointed. They're going to tell everybody they know that knows you too, what they heard you say and how you behaved. That's something to remember all the time you're out in the world. All the time you're out in the world. It's a responsibility. If you care about your fans and if you care about yourself, you just cannot let it all hang out all the time. And that may be something, I may be extremely old-fashioned. I know I am. And self-protective, I know I am. But there are young people in the industry now that nothing is not visible.
They could sure use some mentoring.
You should pick and choose what you really want to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That you are not always in control of who heard what you said.
No, I totally get it. I was a judge for 26 years. I knew to keep my mouth carefully shut because my job depended on it. And, you know, I want to pay tribute to your grandson, David. He created this wonderful website called soapoperasecrets.com. You and Bill shared your secrets for a happy and fulfilling relationship. I just want to tell you, there were 20 lessons on that website. And some of my favorites are that partners should kiss each other often, sing together, dance together, keep your promises, support your partner's dreams, have illicit adventures, never be jealous of each other. You know, Ms. Hayes, the two of you really understood the meaning of making a commitment to each other. Do you think that online dating has made relationships more disposable than they used to be?
Apparently they have. And yet, online dating, I have 2 successful marriages in my family, amongst my grandchildren from online dating. 2 very different people. My grandson David is one of them. His second marriage is going like gangbusters, and David is a unique and difficult individual. That is, you kind of have to go along with the party because he makes life a party. He was sitting with Billy and me on a cruise ship in Prague, looking at the beautiful Parliament building, and there was not a rain, but a soft mist. And he looked at us and said, I have an idea, secrets of soap opera lovers. I thought, well, that's sweet, David. That's very sweet. But he followed through. He, of course, was there the night that we got the Lifetime Achievement Awards. He continues to honor his family, all of his family, especially his grandfather, and very kindly, me as well. I have another grandson whom I adore, who is at this moment just having arrived in Michigan in a joyous little cavalcade of his wife that he met online, their beautiful 6-year-old daughter, and the new family dog. They have bought a little dilapidated cottage on the on the shores of Lake Michigan. The shores of Lake Michigan is where that family vacation takes place once a year that I wanted to attend when Bill Bell said, "This is the show." And my grandson understands the mystique of that town, of that place. And because of that, he bought the house in order to have something for his family and his generation to continue those feelings in that precious time.
I hope you go back there.
I will, because he also has his grandfather's ashes with him, and they will be interred in the cemetery where we bought a stone in 2011. And there are plots there for both of us. And all we have to fill in is the dates. I could show you a picture, but I don't have my phone right now of where that is. Yes,
well, I tell you, I'm so impressed with your example of what a commitment is. Not only because of the beautiful marriage, but you had to work together. That's not easy for a couple to maintain and sustain a happy relationship when you're also working together. Do you have advice for people who are having trouble with that?
Respect, 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 and give them space. When I had Billy as my husband, I felt I could be in charge of some of the things around him. And Bill is basically easygoing, one of the reasons that people loved him so much. I am not. And I would rush in and say, "Oh, no, Billy should be wearing the red tie." I was pushy, and I was taking offense on his behalf when there was when he never took offense if things were brushed aside. It didn't faze him, and I allowed it to faze me, and I got in the way. And that was a mistake. And I learned, be patient. Let the other person who is working with you do with their way what they want to do. Let it go. Let it go. Keep him happy, and you'll be happy. Happy husband, happy wife. Happy wife, happy life.
Well, I think sometimes you just cared too much. You just cared so much and wanted it to be right.
Yes. That too, but you got to look at the big picture.
That's for sure. You know, you've talked about your fans. They're incredibly loyal and supportive, not only devoted to the show, but of course to the characters of Doug and Julie. If you could take a moment and speak to your fans right now, what would you say to them?
Thank you for all the letters and the good wishes and the emotional support that I feel regarding my husband's passing. Thank you for the love, the applause, the laughs. Thank you for becoming, in many cases, very close friends, very close and treasured friends. Thank you for your enthusiasm, which lights up an actor's enthusiasm. Thank you for expressing doubts, fears, love, parallels, telling me your stories, listening to ours. You are the treasures of a technological age where people can be in touch, can let each other know how they feel. Never neglect that. Never resolve to be alone with a book or alone with a good idea. Share it. The world needs you. The world needs all the love you have to give.
Well, Miss Susan Seaforth Hayes, I just adore you. I thank you for opening your heart to the world every single day, every time you're on television, every interview you've ever given. You've shared your life lessons. You're humble and you're kind, and you are talented beyond words. and your compassion and respect for the people you know, the people you don't know who love you is immense. And you have honored me enormously by appearing on our show. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Harvey. Back at you, honey. Thank you.
Our guest has been the legendary Susan Seaforth Hayes. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.